When California stay-at-home orders were given in mid-March, our Alumni Association staff and its wonderful lead volunteers, many of who are with us today, pivoted from in-person to digital engagement. It was a dramatic swing for a high-touch operation, and today's program is a result of the desire to continue offering meaningful opportunities for our alumni and friends to connect with one another and with the University of San Diego. Specifically, today's program hopes to engage with our military-connected community members. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items as it pertains to our Zoom connection today. Please keep your microphones muted, as Eric mentioned earlier. I do recommend adjusting to hide non-camera participants and moving to speaker view so you can see our illustrious alumni speakers more clearly as we move forward in the program. A couple introductions I'd like to make before we get started. Maya Hood from the Office of Alumni Relations will be available in monitoring chat to answer any USD and Alumni specific questions. Maya, do you want to pop in just to say hello to everyone?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. We are so glad to have you here. I'm looking forward to the rest of the session. Again, as Kara's mentioned, if you have any questions or concerns about the Alumni Association, feel free to pop them in the Zoom chat and I'll be happy to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you, Maya. Also, chat will be moderated as well by Rob Connect, AVN's Executive Director, to answer Alumni Veteran Network specific questions. Rob, are you able to activate your camera so our friends can put a face to a name?
Absolutely. Rob Connect here. Team welcome. Really appreciate Eric leading us through this and for all of our alumni veterans for joining us today. Anything related to AVN, put it in the chat and I will answer it for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. And then the last introduction I'd like to make is in regard specifically to our chat questions. So if you have questions throughout the program, one of our Alumni Veteran Network leadership members, Jennifer Castro Garcia, will be taking care of those, monitoring the chat, and pulling together questions for our panel when we get to that Q&A session. Jennifer, would you like to say hello to today's participants?
Hi, y'all, and thank you all for being here. It's really nice to see everybody. Just as Kara mentioned, just please indicate in the chat if you would like to ask the question yourself, or just indicate if you would like me to ask it for you. And I look forward to starting. So thank you, Kara.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. All right. So you guys know the man, Eric Flynn. He's already introduced himself, and I wanted to go ahead and share a little bit about Eric, who will be moderating today's session. Eric just graduated with his master's degree in executive leadership from the University of San Diego. Congratulations to you, Eric, and welcome officially to the Alumni Association. A little bit about Eric. Eric is a U.S. Navy veteran who served between 1988 and 1996. He continues to support the military by coaching active duty veterans for advancement in military service or successful civilian careers. Eric developed as a servant leader in USD's executive leadership program and is preparing to launch a leadership consulting practice to help San Diego small businesses and nonprofit organizations bring out the best in people to achieve success. Without further ado, it's my privilege to hand it back over to Eric. Eric, take it away.
Thank you, Kara. I'm not sure if I feel even more old or what, but I do feel thankful that the Alumni Association let me join in a bit early. I don't even have my degree in hand, and I'm already a welcome member. So I appreciate that vote of confidence that I'll pass my last class this weekend. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm excited to be a part of USD's Alumni Veteran Network, which really exists to help toreros who have served in the military find social and professional support. So we're thankful you're all here. I'm especially excited about the conversation we're going to have today with our 5 incredible USD alumni leaders who are making a significant impact to help people and their organizations thrive during today's challenging times. These are leaders who are doing great work long before our world got locked into this pandemic. And now, in addition to COVID-19, events in Minneapolis and in other parts of our country are now contributing even greater to the crisis that's impacting us all. So I'm proud, and I'm proud to know them, and I'm grateful that they are giving some of their time with us today to share a bit of inspiration about how we as leaders and as a community can help ourselves and others not only get through, but achieve greater levels of success. So our agenda will allow us to hear from each of these leaders for 5 minutes. It's too bad the military term for loud and clear wasn't 10 by 10 or something like that, or we'd be able to give you a little bit more time. But fortunately, after our individual remarks, we'll invite them to our virtual roundtable, where we'll discuss what they've been doing to help their organization, the people they've been leading, and what they're doing to keep themselves healthy and motivated to keep doing their very best. I would like to make a little quick disclaimer that while these individuals, these leaders represent some really great organizations, the purpose of our chat today is really just people talking to people. It's veterans, it's staff, association, it's guests, but we are talking to individuals here. We're not talking about direct policies or things that we want the organizations that they represent to be held accountable for. And we actually encourage that you please keep that secret, because not secret, but confidential, privileged, because they're going to be sharing some things that their organizations are struggling with, some things that they're personally maybe struggling with. And so we wouldn't want that to be shared with others in an inappropriate way. So thanks for just respecting that and joining us here today. So if that's all good, I would just ask we to get started with our first guest. Okay. So my pleasure to introduce Jodi Grineer. She's the CEO of Foundation for Women Warriors, nearly 100-year-old nonprofit organization that honors and empowers women veterans in their transition to civilian life. She served for over a decade in the Marine Corps, in the intelligence community, a few of those years right here in San Diego at Camp Pendleton. Jodi studied psychology in undergrad and earned her master's in nonprofit leadership and management from USD. And she's a true champion for women and veterans, having led a nationwide campaign to reconsider gender roles, veteran stereotypes, and capabilities of women. In 2019, she testified before the House Committee on Veterans Affairs on the issues impacting the economic well-being of women veterans. So welcome, Jodi. It's an honor to have you join us today.
Thank you so much, Eric, and thank you everyone for joining today. One correction, I did not serve for over a decade, just 5 years, but 5 years as a Marine, always a Marine, right? So at Foundation for Women Warriors, what we do is really honor and empower women veterans through a various suite of programs. We provide emergency financial assistance, childcare assistance. We work with other organizations to provide the resources in which we're not equipped to. And then we also do workshops focused on the professional development of women veterans. I don't know about anyone else, but on my SWAT planning or strategic plan, a pandemic definitely was not listed. So in the early days of watching the news and becoming more and more aware of what a threat COVID was across the globe, but also to our own communities, myself and my board gathered to really understand what the impact was going to be on our organization, on our employees, but most definitely our women veterans. With that, we serve, of the women that we serve, 70% are single parents. So as you have reductions of hours, loss of jobs and wages, the complexity of now being at home with children was something that we had to consider, and how we were going to not only meet the financial needs of our women veterans, but also the emotional and personal needs of keeping them healthy and ensuring their well-being at this time. With that, I'll hand my time back over.
Thank you, Jodi. And I apologize for the time thing. It seems like 5 years feels like 10 years. So maybe I just subliminally rounded that up for you.
No worries.
I appreciate you being here today. Amazing. So the next person I'd like to introduce is Tony Teravainen. Had the pleasure to get to know Tony for the last few years. Tony is CEO of STEP, which stands for Support the Enlisted Project. STEP assists young military and veteran families escape financial crisis and become self-sufficient through financial counseling, grants, and other vital programs. Tony grew up in the military with a military family and experienced firsthand the hardships that young military families endure. He served for 9 years as a Navy submariner. Hopefully I got that one right. We'll see. He studied business management and nuclear engineering, which I think is a pretty amazing combination of curriculums, and completed USD's Master's in Executive Leadership in 2012. He's now working on his PhD in public policy at Liberty University. So, Tony, thanks for joining us from the backseat of a car in a parking lot at the DMV. It's great to have you here today, too.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I appreciate that. And yeah, as an update, in this crazy COVID world, we're trying to do what it takes to keep everything going. I've got my daughter to DMV. I got her appointment to get her learner's permit test taken, and in the meantime, I got word she passed. So congratulations. Now I'm stuck here for another 90 minutes in the back of my car, but it's all good. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate it. It's definitely an honor to be included with all these other folks. And you got it right. 8.5, 9 years as a submariner in the United States Navy. Before that, I grew up in that military family, and my transition out of the military wasn't exactly planned, or let's just say it could have gone much better. From those experiences, I learned a lot about the military, how it affects children, families, psychology. And after I got out, I did that thing where you kind of walk away from the military and don't want anything to do with it. And I was completely gone of it for about 17 years. And then I got into a position, I started volunteering back. And I recognized very easily the struggle, the mentality, the faces, the moods, the phraseology that I was hearing from these veterans and military families and kids and service members and spouses. And it really resonated with me. But, in my time away, I had learned a lot about the world, and I started to get to this point where it's like, there's things we can do to change this. There's things that we can do that can change, and specifically in areas of finance, that we can help these families understand the things that they need to know to get them to a self-sufficient lifestyle. And that was really the impetus behind creating STEP. And I think we created the vision first, because it's truly the vision that's carried us through this big transition here with COVID. Our mission is to help young military families and transitioning veterans achieve and live a life of financial self-sufficiency. But our vision is to be relevant, to be reliable, and to help anybody that is not self-sufficient move to self-sufficiency and really take on that responsibility. If they don't know about us, we need to figure out how to let them know about us and let them know about their options. So as we went into this COVID issue, it started breaking down, I guess in March. I totally lost track of time this year, but it's June now, so 3 months ago. Before we would wait for families in crisis, and they would have to get to their inflection point, a point in their life where they decided they wanted their finances to change. And a lot of that circulated around the receipt of an eviction order, repossession notice, your electricity getting turned off, a tow truck following you around to take your car, the landlord beating down your door. And at that point, people would kind of get so frustrated and fed up enough where they would finally reach out for some help. And that's when they would engage with our program. And we've done a great job in helping thousands of families with a very high success rate. But the issue with COVID became that's all well and good, but right now people actually aren't worried about keeping their cars. They're not worried about their insurance. They're not worried about the dental and medical deductibles. They've dropped down on kind of Maslow's level of psychological levels, and it's like now they're worried about staying alive. Now they're worried about just feeding their families. So their whole definition of crisis shifted. And us as an agency that takes on the responsibility to go find these folks, we said we need to go where they're at. We need to change with the environment. We need to be what they need today, just like we needed to be what they needed 3 months ago. So today what we're seeing is a lot more basic emergency needs. We're seeing a lot more people that are questioning what next month is going to look like, what 2 months is going to look like. They're really sacrificing any long-term planning just to get through this week and really pulling back the scope of their survival. So One of the things we did was start doing more basic needs distributions. So diapers, wipes, food, adult hygiene products, these types of things. How can I get these items in front of the families that need them to relieve some of that stress? You remember early in it, nobody knew who was getting sick. Service members were getting sequestered at work, or the ships were getting contaminated. It's a big issue when you have a deployed service member and the spouse comes down with COVID, and then what do you do with the kids? So these were all big issues. So we kind of re-engineered our entire office. Actually, we turned our office conference room into a warehouse, and we turned our warehouse space into a giant food storage and diaper storage locker, and found ways to distribute these things to the families because that's what they need during this crisis. But at the same time, how do I plant the seeds to say that there's still going to be issues? You're still going to have to pay that rent sooner or later. You're still going to have to pay that credit card sooner or later. There's a life beyond COVID, and how can we work with it? So we engaged our social workers, and we have them doing a lot more interaction with our old clients, our past clients, with our new clients. We have our social workers doing the check-in, and they're consciously having conversations with each of the families, trying to either plant seeds or ask them questions that can get them moving forward. So it's definitely been a big hurdle and challenge in adapting to the environment, but I definitely think as business leaders, it's our responsibility to do that. In the nonprofit world, we need to do it to remain relevant, and obviously in the for-profit world, we need to do it to remain relevant. So yeah, that's what we're doing at STEP.
It's great stuff, Tony. Thanks for sharing that. It's a constant reminder that, you know, where I live, I guess where my world is not the same as others that aren't, you know, doing as well, or we will. I think most of us here feel like we're struggling, we're hurting, we're doing something, we're challenged, but there are so many other people that are challenged even greater than many of us here. So it's important to understand that, and I appreciate you sharing those stories. I'd like to press on, if you don't mind, and just now welcome or invite Jim Toth to speak to us. Jim has been the owner and an operator of Chick-fil-A in Temecula for nearly 6 years. The reputation Chick-fil-A has for great customer service is certainly due to people like Jim. I've had the pleasure of visiting him at his restaurant, and I can tell you that on top of selling a great meal, he's really passionate about developing great people that epitomize the servant's heart. And evidently flying helicopters and numerous combat tours for the Marines for over 20 years is how one prepares for a role to run a Chick-fil-A as a franchise leader. He had an especially interesting tour flying President George W. Bush and his support staff around the globe for a few years. And I guess if you can handle the pressure of flying the President of the United States, you can handle the hustle and bustle of Chick-fil-A at lunchtime. Jim studied history in undergrad and is a graduate as well of USD's Master in Executive Leadership program. So Jim, thanks so much for being here, and glad we got to rescue you from probably a busy lunch line here today. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with a whole bunch of awesome MSCL and USD people. What a pleasure. So Paul, you win the award for best Zoom background. It's not there anymore, but the palm tree and the waves crashing on the shore, you win. I'm trying to up my Zoom game, and I have something to aspire to. So good job. So I am the president and owner of Grace James Enterprises, and I operate the Chick-fil-A out here in the island of Temecula, as we call it. And this has been certainly the last 4 months have been very, very, just like everybody else, very challenging, and for a number of different reasons. And then, you know, we have COVID-19, and certainly we've just pivoted right over to George Floyd and the disaster that has become and is. And it's just been truly, for my business, I am an essential business. So I think that was probably the largest challenge for us, is when this started, the question was not whether we were going to be open or not. We had the opportunity to stay open. It's how were we going to stay open? And we, you know, for us, we have a culture of people, a culture of process, and a culture of continuous growth. So the question for us with our people was, okay, well, how do we make sure that, where do we set the bar on our people? What does that look like for a win? And for us, you know, it was keeping everybody employed and not laying anybody off. And in March that was a scary proposition in March as we, you know, as COVID-19 started, everyone was truly staying home and business dropped off precipitously. It came back, and I think it came back for us, particularly because of our dedication to our community and the services we do provide. We are a first choice for many families and individuals as well. And then the stress on the systems, as we had to close the dining room, which is half of our business generally, trying to figure out the stress to our systems and our processes, to how do we continue to operate in a world where 50% of your ability to sell your product or service goes away. And so luckily, you know, because we have this culture of growth in our business, we were able to, with the sit down with my executive team, leadership team within the organization, and say, all right, well, how are we going to do this? No, the goal is to keep everybody employed, keep 100% of hours, and make sure that everyone that's working now and wants hours gets them. And so because we have a systematic approach to the way we do things, we rejiggered the way we are running our drive-through in my little world. And our drive-through is, you know, we own the parking lot now, and because we didn't have any customers trying to park there, we could change everything around, and we were able to, I mean, amazingly, my business is up. We are hiring as fast as we possibly can, because our sales are, we're just crushing it. And I say that because the team the team was prepared, and because we had, you know, we have the biggest fear for our people was coming to work and catching COVID, which made sense. And because you're essential business doesn't mean your people feel like they essentially need to be there. Especially in my business, where, you know, my average wage rate at my business is, it's well above minimum wage, but still well below what you can make on unemployment, with the current situation the way it is with unemployment. So that has been, you know, we rested directly on our culture, our connectivity, our community within the organization. And also, we believe we truly have tried to have a vision, a meaning, and a bigger purpose for the time we've been open and I've been running this organization. So I think that was very helpful for us. So right now, the biggest challenge is continues to be driving sales. And honestly, the biggest challenge now is right back to the people, our people. It is so busy at our store that it's just killing our people. It's killing my team. So I get to do this today, and my team's there right now at 2:30, and I guarantee the line's wrapped around the building, and they're dealing with a lot of guests. So, and when you put 3,000 or so transactions through a day, even if 0.1% of 1% are angry people, or stressed people or unhappy people, that's a lot of people. And so that's my biggest stress right now. And it always is with this business, but even more so now because of everything going on between COVID and now George Floyd, and the repercussions of that. It is an interesting place out there right now. We see everybody. We see a lot of our community. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. It just reminds me how much I feel like my dog sometimes. I don't get out of the house much, but when I do, I get really excited about it. And part of our highlight of the week sometimes is going off to not the Temecula, it's too far for me, but to our local Chick-fil-A and just enjoying a meal through the drive-thru and going somewhere and having a picnic. I mean, the simple things just make you smile. So thanks for doing what you're doing to help bring some degree of health and peace to people who need a smile right now. I'm going to move on to Ramel Salgado. So it's my pleasure to welcome and to introduce Ramel. He's a Navy Mustang who started his career nearly 20 years ago as an enlisted sailor, and then earned an appointment from the Secretary of the Navy to attend the Naval Academy in Annapolis. That was exactly my dream when I went into the Navy, so I wasn't able to get that far like Ramel did, but he's my role model for that one. I do remember him sharing that he served aboard as a surface warfare officer aboard the USS Boxer back in the day. If you remember the movie Captain Phillips, that was the ship that the team used to do what they did to rescue Captain Phillips. So he's got a little celebrity status back in his career for that. In his current role as the military lead of fleet support at Naval Information Warfare Systems Command, NAVWAR, he helps ensure our Navy ships around the world have computer and intelligence systems they need to achieve their mission success. Ramel's also studied at the Naval Postgraduate School, the Naval War College, and like others here today, is a 2016 graduate of the USD's MS in Executive Leadership Program. So Ramel, my friend, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure to be here. And just real quick, I want to help out Jim. Jim forgot to mention that everyone on this call gets a free lunch and large milkshake if you just mentioned you were on this Zoom call. Is that right, Jim?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just tell them that downtown, wherever you guys are down in San Diego. I'm sure it'll work out for you wonderfully.
Hey, so up front, I want to apologize. I'm probably not as great on my feet and talking off the cuff like the previous guest, and probably the least interesting. So I did use Eric Flynn's template to go over my quick intro. So first off, some of the highlights of my military service, and Eric alluded to it. Yeah, a lot of Liberty ports, a lot of deployments, but I think the highlight of my my military service has been all the free education. Starting off in nuclear power school, going to Annapolis, and as Eric mentioned, and then most recently using my GI Bill at USD. Not to mention all the job-specific schools I attended along the way for various certifications, ranging from a few days to several months. Really helped me build to be the person that I am, and hopefully marketable when I eventually retire. I am still active duty. I literally have tried to retire twice. Real quick story. The first time I even had a retirement ceremony, and less 2 days before, with family and friends flying in all over the country, food and beer paid for, I got a call less than 2 days prior saying that my retirement had been denied by the Admiral at the Navy personnel due to a manning shortage. That was 3.5 years ago. I again attempted to submit my retirement last fall to retire this coming fall. But I was countered with a pretty cool deal that I just could not refuse. So I got godfathered, if you all remember that line in that reference. Speaking of USD, so the next bullet is my highlight of my time at USD. I did the Master of Science in Executive Leadership program. Number one, like most MSCL grads, was our trip abroad. I spent 10 days in Spain with my cohort. That was a great big highlight. For me, very specifically, my youngest son was born while I was in the middle of the program during my first year. So I call him my MSCL baby. And I gained a lot of lifelong friends along with my cohort. Next bullet is, so what I'm doing right now. Currently, I'm the military lead for fleet sustainment at Naval Information Warfare Systems Command, NAVWAR, previously called SPAWAR. But as I alluded to moments ago, I detached NAVWAR in July, and I'm headed to the Surface and Mine Warfare Development Center here in San Diego. I'm going to lead the Computers, Communication, Combat Systems, and Intelligence Department. This organization is relatively new. It is the top gun for surface warriors and warship operators. It's a relatively new command, so I just thought it'd be both fun and interesting to be part of that organization as it develops and grows. So I'm going to keep my uniform on just for a few more years. My quick intro.
Well, the country is grateful for you sticking around and providing what you do. It takes special people. And I can see him back there. I won't call him out too much. I won't ask you to unmute, but Marv Hines is giggling because I think that's his world in the EOD space. And he's like, yeah, mine people. We love it. So thanks for what you're doing. My cohort has a baby, an MSCL baby as well. Juliana Casso from my cohort enjoyed her second born during her time. So something about the MSCL makes people want to have some kids. So thanks for being here, Ramel. We appreciate you being. Don't unmute. My next honor is to invite someone who's in my MSCL cohort, Greg Martin. Greg's the president of Warrior Foundation Freedom Station here in San Diego. The foundation enables post 9/11 ill and injured warriors to live self-sufficient lives through programs that promote recovery and independence and create kind of a passion for the future. Greg developed his passion for serving those who have served during his 30 years as a Marine Corps officer. When he wasn't involved in combat operations, he helped lead a company that protected President Bill Clinton and led a Wounded Warrior Battalion earlier in his days. I think it's where he got the bug to go back and continue serving those who have been heroes for our country. Like others in our panel, Greg's a lifelong learner, degrees from San Diego State, the Army War College, Marine Corps Command and Staff College, and very soon with me, he'll add Master of Executive Leadership to all those diplomas you might see behind him there on his wall. So Greg, thanks so much for being a part of this today. Tell us about yourself.
Thanks, everybody. Great to be here. And Eric, thanks for the intro. I had no idea I had that much education. The kids on my block would be really surprised. So hey, I'll start, 30-year Marine Corps career. I'm not going to go into any detail on that. Most of you have a pretty good idea what that entails. A lot of different duty stations, a lot of places, a lot of relationships, a lot of learning and experience, which ultimately, led me exactly to where I'm at now. And I'm one of the few that feels just tremendously blessed that I landed in a place that's exactly in line with my personal values, exactly in line what I see as my purpose in life, and in a great place to be. Having said that, I've got plenty of challenges, and I share them with Eric, and a couple of friends from my cohort are on here as well, so they're well aware of some of the challenges that we faced. So I'm probably one of the oldest folks on here, but one of the most recent off of active duty. And so a bit of a different perspective. And in some ways, my head's still spinning from that 30-year career, and I'm adjusting to being a veteran and to being a civilian. And so, another thing I was very fortunate about, I really never looked for a job. Kind of like Ramel, I had retirement plans on a couple of occasions. About 4 years ago, I was the J3 in Iraq, and 23 country coalition. We're clearing ISIS out of Mosul, and I had an approved retirement date by the Marine Corps, and I was planning on coming home, getting out, and having about 3 months to find my next career. And I got a call from headquarters Marine Corps late one night in Baghdad, and kind of dangled a new set of orders at me to stay a little longer. And it was as the Fleet Marine officer right here in San Diego, where I wanted to retire from. So I thought, oh, that'd be great. I'll have a little more time to get out. Well, I kind of attacked my transition like I would an operation. The job I ended up having most of my last half of my career, if I wasn't in command, I was directing operations somewhere. And you know how process oriented that is. Everything's very structured. We have a military process. We have crisis action, planning, all these processes, these procedures, these battle rhythms. And that was the kind of the world that I lived in. My last job at the 3rd Fleet here in San Diego with the Navy, I was also the director of future operations there. And so it's always very much mission focused, a high sense of urgency for what was going on. And so I'll get into, crisis action, or what this, current crisis is, and how we've sort of attacked it here at my current position. But all this structure that I left, I found myself in a very unstructured world. So I joined this small not-for-profit who basically hired me just based on a relationship that I'd had with them over many years. So 10 or 12 years ago, I commanded the Wounded Warrior effort in the Marine Corps. And it was in the early days. We were just standing these things up, and was very well supported, by the government. My staff grew from 14 to 180 while I was there, and unfortunately, so did the number of wounded warriors that we were serving. Back in those days, we had a lot of guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, And when I left that command, I had about 65 amputees under my command, about 650 total wounded warriors, but a big bunch of them right here at Balboa Hospital. And one of the things you figure out pretty quick, doesn't really take a lot of smarts to figure out that you can't do this mission by yourself, that these guys really need some help. The government can only do so much. So it does kind of take a sea of humanity and goodwill from the American people. I think we've collectively learned over the years, mostly from the shame that we experienced by not taking good care of our Vietnam generation, is that now there's a lot of people out here, and you can see there's 3 or 4 of us on here working in that world that are, directly focused on taking care of our veterans. And so, essentially I was just offered a job before I started looking one by this foundation, another foundation with a somewhat similar mission in a different part of the country. And I had kind of laid out my transition plan in 4 broad courses of action, I'll call them, in a basic decision-making process. And one of them was not-for-profits, one of them was working for the government and defense contractors and things. One was just going into the corporate world. And usually we talk about these 3 big things in transition: occupation, compensation, and location, or vocation/occupation, I guess I should say. And you kind of prioritize those, figure out which ones are most important. If you're lucky, you get 2 of the 3. And what I found out, though, there's way more, to your priorities that should be part of the equation. So things like autonomy are really huge. Just, purpose and meaning in your life after being a veteran are pretty huge. And granted, I had a pension as a, 30-year colonel, so I was in a little more comfortable place than most, with some flexibility to maybe take a job where, where income wasn't the top priority. So I feel pretty blessed there. But I get here, and it's a very small not-for-profit, started by these very passionate older ladies. And they started in 2004, done phenomenally well. I mean, we raised $4 million last year, and I was the first person they've ever hired. And so their overhead and things have been very, very low, still are. We're rated 4 stars and all the charity watchdogs and so on. But as a guy who's used to kind of looking at the mission, analyzing it, and kind of has a growth mindset myself, coming out of the business school there, it's been a little frustrating because people are very slow to grow. They're very frugal. My board of directors are there's 18 of them, most of them, what I call them the old guard. They're kind of old school. They're not very entrepreneurial in the mindset, and even in the not-for-profit world, I mean, you just, I think Tony, indicated you don't want to lose relevance. You have a lot of, donors out there, and there's a lot of people that need help. And so I have had some frustrations as a new guy coming in and just, full of energy and wanting to grow to the next level and having the resources to do it. But I'm up against some obstacles on just kind of the old guard that's who I work with great, but just is a little more conservative and resistance to grow. And so when the coronavirus was evident there back in early to mid-March that this was an actual crisis, I kind of went into crisis action mode, and I brought in a couple of board members who I thought would be helpful. Did some crisis action process planning, just using a basic process, and came up with some actions that we might take in the wake of COVID. And we put together some nice little actions. I wanted to budget about $250,000 for a COVID-19 Emergency Warrior Assistance Fund. And I did my homework, put together kind of a nice little package on it to take to the board of directors. And it ended up being really controversial with my board of directors. Some of them were a little bit in denial that it was even a crisis, and there's extensive conversations about that. And there was kind of a element within there that didn't want to do anything. And I think that just inaction is hardly ever the right thing to do. I mean, military background or maneuver warfare doctrine in the Marine Corps is about speed and surprise and tenacity, and just kind of sitting there and waiting for things to happen. just not part of my personal DNA. I think as veterans, we all kind of cultivate a bias for action, and particularly during a crisis where some people might need help. So some of the research I did was quickly with, I'm watching the clock here, see that I'm kind of running out, so I'll kind of speed it up. I'll just skip to what we did. Great success so far with this emergency COVID relief fund. There are a lot of folks out there whose lives have been changed a little bit by this. We've also partnered with the San Diego Restaurant Association, who's really hurting, who's supported us in the past, and we've been buying about 120 meals a week from different restaurants to feed the guys that are kind of isolated in the barracks at Balboa Hospital and also at Camp Pendleton. And with the time down, we've also been able to do some great things like a new mentorship program, and a couple of you on here volunteered. Thanks. Anybody wants to volunteer to mentor young warriors to the next phase of their life, we're at www.warriorfoundation.org, or you can email me, greg.martin@warriorfoundation.org. I'll just stop there. Thanks.
That's good. Thank you, Greg. You did a great job. I appreciate you sharing all that. And you are doing a lot of great stuff with Warrior Foundation. In fact, while you mentioned it, if you want to type that in the chat window as well, I'm sure some people would love to follow up and maybe be a part of that. I know I'm excited to be a mentor in that program. So if we can push this on, just to keep us on schedule, I think we're ready to go into the roundtable part of our conversation. Wish it was round. I wish we had a better way to show everybody in one space to make that a little more close. But the general gist is I'm going to throw out a couple of questions, and I'm going to direct them to particular panelists for the sake of keeping it succinct and on track here. And they're going to kind of flow from an organizational to a people to a personal reflection. So if we can kick this off, and while we're doing that, I'm inviting again the people who are listening in as participants, type in your questions for these panelists into the chat window, and our friendly moderators, Jennifer and Rob, will help prioritize that. And when we get ready to ask the questions from you, we'll be queued and ready to go. So use this time to kind of trigger what you'd like to be asking our panelists. My first question is for Jodi and Tony, and that is, the challenges we're dealing with today have severely disrupted our world, right? And the impact has certainly been felt on our organizations, and yours especially. So tell me, what have you done to help your organization succeed in response to these challenges? Jodi, would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you. So I think I'm going to take a not 21-second pause like Trudeau, but I think that what we had to do was really identify what we did well and how we can continue to do that and make it accessible. What was going to be our impact to our bottom line with moving out of in-person events, and quickly wrap our heads around what our cash position was. And then also keeping in mind my staff and ways that we can take care of them. So, looking at that, and then also realizing this is happening now, but how do we remain both reactive but strategic for the next 6 months to a year and then beyond that, and being as conservative but as impactful as possible. So the first thing I did was took a look at my staff and decided, as a women's empowerment organization, laying off a team of all women, just by default, we have all women that work for us, just wasn't the answer, especially amid a crisis where, work was very little, like we had little access to work at that point. So I took a pay cut myself, and then I reduced my staff's hours to where they were still impactful. But then also California has an unemployment, partial unemployment if you receive reduced hours. So we did that. We also took a look at what are our eligibility requirements and point of entry for our programs. Historically, you had to either be in school, working, or agree to work with a partner agency to receive some sort of financial assistance, because we're a up, not a handout. And we realized that's no longer the case. So we created both an emergency program that removed that barrier of access to our programs, and then also an emergency fund. And launching the emergency fund, we launched that along with PR, so that I was talking on the news and we gained public support. And then also I had to have hard conversations with our funders about, this is where we're at. What are you doing to respond and understand how they were going to come alongside of us? Working with a historically vulnerable population, they became even more vulnerable because of stay at home, losing jobs, and then having their children out of school. We also took a look at what can we do online in order to help people help themselves. And we launched a series of webinars dealing with financial planning in a crisis, how to review where you're at, pivot, and then also reflect so you don't end up back in this position again in the future. We also had a series of webinars around mindfulness and meditation and how to thrive in the midst of chaos, which I think as veterans, we're kind of built for this. Break glass in case of war, break glass in case of chaos, right? And then I also had to just be a patient and empathetic leader and check in with each of my team members on an individual level and understand what was impacting them. We each had our own challenges. I lost a family member to COVID. Other team members had either had someone pass and they couldn't have a proper burial. So, just being mindful that even though we want to go, be fast and help people, that we had to be in the best shape ourselves. So that's really some of the actions that we took to both remain impactful, but conservative and strategic.
Excellent. Thank you, Jodi. Tony, would you like to chime in? What have you done, or how has STEP been impacted by this?
Yeah, those are all great points that Jodi added. I think Greg actually touched on some of this question too. So, as this was coming down, this is definitely a lesson in market lead. You need getting to market first in this case, I think, was essential, and we realized we had to take some kind of action. We're a public service agency. We're a public charity. We're serving a good that is not met by other needs in the community. So if we fold, then this need will not be met anymore, the specific needs that we fill. So and as a leader, this is beyond shareholder value, right? This is the community's my shareholder. So I need to make sure that I can keep my agency alive through, March was, all bets were off in March. Nobody knew what. It was the Wild West. So looking at that cash position, looking at your responsibilities to our clients, but also I got 12 employees now. So how do I keep them engaged? How do I keep them employed? How do I find ways to keep them operating with their world that's also kind of going to hell in a handbasket? It's like everybody's got these lives that are in control, and then something like this happens and it blows up. Case in point, I'm sitting at DMV, right? But so how do I let them take care of their world, but also give me that piece of their life so we can put their piece into step and we can continue to serve these clients. We had lost a client, or excuse me, lost an employee voluntarily like 2 weeks before COVID hit. So we were running a person down, and I took that person's salary and divided it up amongst my remaining employees. And I said, all right, you have to cover this person's job for I don't know how long, because we're not rehiring. We don't know what's going on, but I'll take that money and I'll split it amongst y'all because you're going to be doing her work. And that, coupled with a lot of open discussions about working from home, the responsibilities, what resources do you need? It's kind of like, let's treat them like they're capable people. Let's treat them like, give them the expectation they're going to continue to deliver results with excellence. And how do you get that across in the ways? And it's like, I'm asking them about their chairs at home, their work environment at home, their laptops, their computers. What do you need at your house to get your work done? How can we have minimal people in the office and continue to meet these regimes? And it was a big part of our focus through the month of March and through April. And once we hit May, I think everybody really just pulled their stride, and working from home was then the new norm. So staying ahead of all the questions, staying ahead of the issues was very important there. The same with the clients. I talked earlier about what do the clients need? What's the most important thing we can do right now? Relevance is hugely important. And I'm not one to go out and toot my horn, but I knew going into this crisis that as the leader of this agency, I'm responsible ultimately for keeping it alive and afloat. And I had to make the determination that we're going to need to get out in front of the public. We're going to need to purposely take more actions to make it known what we're doing out in the community. So what's it going to take? And then we started doing a little more press releases. We started doing more engagements with the county and city folks that help us regularly. It's like help everybody become aware of what we're doing so we can continue this self-referral partnership that we have with the rest of the community that's got us this far. How do we work with more partner agencies? How do I bring in people like Jodi? How do I bring in people like Courage to Call and other agencies so we can all have the touch points on this common client group we have? So remaining relevant to our employees, remaining relevant to our clients, and then ultimately making sure that STEP is here when the smoke settles / when we get adjusted to what the new norm looks like. And that's kind of what we look like, and it's been a constant state of change. My board has been behind me. I know, again, Greg said he had some issues with his board, and that's kind of a time thing. You get more experience working with the board, I think, talking to some more nonprofit CEOs. But working that stuff offline with them, getting a coalition to support what you want to do, and a lot of times just kind of going out and doing it and starting down and finding some good results in some pilot format, and then presenting the benefits back to the board, and 9 times out of 10 they're going to be supportive as long as it's within your mission wheelhouse. So yeah, it's been definitely a time of change at STEP, but we're working through the COVID issues. As far as the civil unrest now, that stuff is really that's not affecting us, and I don't expect us to affect us. We take care of our military population. Our military is a pretty square representation of America, and that stuff just doesn't matter to us. We ask the questions about military service. We ask questions about when you discharged, and if you fit that window, then we're going to take care of you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. Reminds me, many of us are in the MSEL program, and the thing I took away from our leading change class was the change has a lot to do with people. It's very little to do with the actual process. It's conditioning the other people to accept that change, and that's a long, complicated process. So I understand where you're getting at, and I appreciate what you're saying what you've had to do to try to get people to stay on there. Just for the sake of pushing through time, we're about 30 minutes out. So we have a 3:30 or 15:30 stop plan. We want to make sure we allocate time for our questions from the panelists as well. So I love these comments, and I don't want to cut anybody short. I just will ask the remainder, Jim, Ramel, and Greg, if we can kind of tighten our answers down to just a couple minutes. That'll help us kind of stay on track and hear from some of the people that are in our guests today. So speaking of that, so let's push on to the next side of the questions, which is now really getting into the people side of it. And I think both people so far have addressed that there's people aspects to these organizational challenges. But for Jim and Ramel, how has this crisis affected the people in your organization? And what advice do you have to help others during these challenging times? Jim, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Starting the clock. See, with us, I think it's less about what is happening. It's less about how we reacted since this started, and more how we prepared, and we've been preparing ourselves over the last several years that I've had this organization. So we look, I think I'll probably focus on the employee value proposition. And as buzzy of a word, phrase as that is, we have developed and we defined very, very clearly what we believe we offer to our staff. And the reason why this COVID, this last 4 months is a great example of why that employee value proposition is so important and so critical. And so when you define it, you really have to figure out, well, what do we offer? And then you really need to be able to articulate it. And we think, and I stole most of my stuff. I'm just a dumb Marine frog guy. So I stole most of my stuff from really smart people. And the Zappos guy, Tony Shia, has just 4 things that he believes, and it's been said in other ways, but that employees, when you do these things, they can say they love their job. And it's pretty simple: perceived growth, perceived progress, community connectedness, and value, vision, bigger purpose, and meaning. So those 4 things that we think, that we've decided that that's what we're going to focus on over the last several years that I've been doing this. And with that focus comes the first 2 I'll leave out, the perceived progress and growth, because right now that's not what the employees need to say they love their job. What they need is a community, and what they need is a vision. They need to believe in the vision, the value, and the bigger purpose. So for us, the question was not, well, what do we do differently that we didn't do before? It's how do we dial in, do better on that value proposition. So for us, that community and connectedness, we just do what we think we do really well already, which is take care of the team in different ways. And because we have nobody in our dining room right now, I took all the condiments out of the condiment island and we stock that every day. When somebody goes to Costco, one of the leaders goes to Costco and they get all kinds of fun stuff and they stock that thing. And the team comes in and it's fresh and it's cool. It's all fun stuff. And they get to, when you're working in a fast food environment in an organization like ours, to have something that no other fast food place, you're never going to find that. You're just not going to have it. The pizza guy showing up. I got the Kona ice truck to come last weekend when it was hot. So, that community and the connectedness, and I'm there every day. That helps too. And then that vision and value, the bigger purpose and meaning part of it is, we have a vision to develop servants who impact and influence the places they lead, and to be the most influential business in the Temecula Valley. And so for us, this always has been more about something different. It's been more about we have a much more different why than the what, right? So the what's chicken sandwiches, the why is the vision. And we've really focused on that. And within that, there's values too. And we have a very defined set of values. And so I guess I'll sum it up at 3 minutes and 20 seconds like this. If when something like this happened, I mean, chaos is, it was awesome. Jodi was talking about chaos. Chaos is constant. It just changes its form, right? And there's always something that's going to be chaotic in your business. And if it's a nonprofit, there's always chaos. And so how do you develop systems and processes that allow you to pivot to whatever that current chaos is? And for us, we very, 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 for our employees, since mine was an employee question, we were very, very definitive on what we think we offer to you as my employee. So that's how we've affected our people here at this, I think, in this current situation.
Starting with a perspective or the great culture that Chick-fil-A is known for, certainly has to be an advantage in that space, but it's great to see you're taking it even to higher levels to keep that culture and improve on it even during this crisis. Ramel, would you like to share some things that you've done with your team to help?
Sure. Both fortunately and unfortunately, the Department of Defense is not a revenue or profit-based organization per se. So luckily, we didn't have to make the very tough calls of layoffs or pay cuts, but we're still people-based. So from a health and safety, organizational change standpoint is where I think I can contribute. When the stay-at-home order came out, our first challenge was determining who is mission essential. And depending on who you talk to, I mean, you'll get answers ranging from, well, everyone's mission essential to, well, nobody's mission essential, depending on from their perspectives. But really the first question we should have asked, and we eventually got there, was, well, what missions are essential? NAVWAR is a pretty large organization. We have over 10,000 people worldwide. So, but a lot of those people are support staff or data analytics or, supply chain management, et cetera. So really analyzing what missions are essential, kind of like with, for those of you with shipboard experience, you lose power on a ship or partial power. There's a process called load shedding where, you disconnect power to the health and comfort spaces first. You definitely want to keep weapon systems up and the engines running, etc. That's the process that we should have started off with, and we got there. But definitely the key questions to ask when it first started. As I was preparing for this, I did come up with 3 bullets real quickly of what I think has come out of this. The first one is, you see in the memes where we will now know what meetings could have been emails. Well, I'm not a big fan of meetings, but what I have learned is that those repetitive overlapping verification meetings was really to push explicitness and clarity in everyone's minds. You've been to those meetings where only half the people are paying attention, the other half are only paying half attention. It's really to be very, very clear. We all have overlapping responsibilities, but with now via email or Zoom meetings, etc., there has to be very, very explicitness and clarity in what everyone's doing. With the day or 2 lag time in verifying what people have done, if you've got 2 people doing the same thing or pointing fingers at each other, I thought that person was doing, you've lost some valuable time. So in real time, explicitness and clarity is very, very important. Kind of tied to that is integrity and trust. There's an old guard out there, and I still believe it myself, is that you need to look someone in the eye. You got to meet them in person. You got to do the handshake. Well, now we've learned literally a handshake is a no-go. So making these deals and trusting that people that are going to follow through is very, very important. So I think trust is going to be even harder to earn these days if we continue with social distancing and teleworking. I think it's going to be even harder to regain lost trust. So losing trust via an email that you said you're going to follow through in, or a meeting or a task, is going to be very challenging. So again, I think having very explicit and strict integrity is going to be critical now more than ever to lead in a post-pandemic world. It is not as easy to meet up or do a drive-by and apologize for any missteps. The old adage of trust but verify, in many ways, all we have is trust. It's a lot harder now to verify. Lastly is the change in agility. Everyone preaches it. Everyone knows you should be, but as proven by recent events, we are a lot of organizations, especially large ones, aren't as agile as they think they are or they think they should be. But in retrospect now, we just had a big meeting with our flag officer. Even when this dwindles down, NAVOR, again, a 10,000 plus organization, our return to workforce is going to be at 75%, with 25% rotating teleworking and other impacts. Just a real quick personal story from a personnel kind of standpoint. When this first broke out, I had a young officer that works for me, and she found out she was pregnant shortly before the pandemic. And her significant other, active duty, is on the opposite coast, and she has orders here for us in San Diego. And she has no support network, like close family. Everyone's from the East Coast, New England area. So I worked really hard with her to, hey, I think we're going to go to max telework anyway. Why don't we get you somewhere over to the East Coast, get you a place to at least check in with physically, but basically telework from home. And it was months weeks in the making, especially with all the travel restrictions. But we got her over there. And she was relatively new to command, kind of an unknown commodity. But I tell you what, she has really taken initiative and taken on responsibilities and working a lot of different issues that I really had no intention of her doing. So kind of what I enjoyed from USD as a whole was the values-based education. I got indoctrinated with my wife. She got her MBA there in 2008. And it's a simple thing. They teach it in all the services, but reiterated in MSCL was, it is amazing what your people give back to you when you take care of them and you're considerate of their needs. And again, she's gone above and beyond what I'd expected, because we as organization were helpful to her.
Love it, Ramel. That's a great example of servant leadership in action for sure. Hey, we're just about the time. So Greg, I hate to do this to you, man, but we got just 2 minutes left for you to kind of share your side of this. Greg, would you just kind of tell us what you've done personally? How's this taken a toll on you as a leader, and what sort of tips would you suggest that people maybe do to help keep themselves in shape mentally, physically, to be able to lead others?
Yeah, so I think, as veterans are, used to having to take care of ourselves while working long hours and that sort of thing, got to stay within height, weight standards, pass physical fitness tests and all those kind of things. So, I've tried to keep that same, obviously I haven't been off active duty that long, but I've still tried to keep that discipline in my life where mind, body, spirit, family, and community, that I'm spending some time and effort in all those areas. And I did find an opportunity in working from home, and just kind of good things that came out of the crisis for me were more time to actually connect instead of less time. So things slowed down a little bit. My wife and I have a lot more time together than we have had in a long time. That was actually a positive thing in our case. I hear it doesn't work out for everybody that way. But and then I have a couple of adult kids who are impacted in an adverse way, but I did get to spend quite a bit of time with them and connect. So I would avoid the happy hour starting before 3 or 4 p.m. That became a bad habit for just for a short time until we caught ourselves and trying to keep a well-balanced life. But overall, just connecting with work too. I came across several warriors I live way up in Fallbrook, and it's kind of out there, but we have a large veteran community over there, and I was able to engage one-on-one with some warriors up there who were really in need of somebody to talk to, type of thing, and probably would not have been able to do that otherwise. So found some unexpected opportunities in the midst of the crisis. And,
awesome. Good. Thank you, Greg. That's good stuff. Appreciate that. Yeah. It's been my blessing as well to spend more time with my family, being at home to take care of that. But leaders know themselves, help themselves so that you can help other people. Great to see what you're doing there. We're ready to take some questions from our audience. So I apologize we didn't get to that earlier. We wanted to kind of get as many as we can, but we're going to kind of rapid fire these. We're going to ask that all responses to our questions be held to 2 minutes. Jennifer, are you ready to cue us up with the first question from our audience?
I am ready. So this is coming from Derek Abbey, and I'll let Eric go ahead and decide which panelist wants to answer this. And so it's a 2-part question. So the first part is, what was the message that you tried to convey as an organization to your employees, constituents, and followers or supporters? And then the second part to that is, what did you want them to think of your organization during the pandemic?
Take the one. So whoever first one feels called, we'll let you ask the first one, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Eric, I'll jump on it with that big pause. So I guess the message I wanted to get across, particularly for everybody involved in our mission, was that we're in the business of helping people, and during a crisis is a time when people need help. Now, that was part of the frustration I alluded to with kind of the old guard, but I think everybody rose to the occasion, and ultimately it's been really exciting.
Yeah, I'll jump on that same thing, Greg. It was really, it's like we have to execute our mission. We have to figure out how to continue to do this. So there's nobody that's going to come in here and tell us what to do. Us as a team need to figure it out. And I think they grabbed onto that and aspired for better things, for sure.
I think you're muted, Eric, but if we're ready to move on to the next question, does
Was I
that sound
muted?
good?
I thought it was unmuted, but yeah, we're ready to go to the next one. My apologies.
All right, so I'm gonna direct it to Paul Pintek, who has a question, if you are ready, Paul.
Sure. Yeah, thanks everybody for being on the panel and everybody who's joining It's great to see all these good toreros. So, one thing that I'm just trying to stay focused on a daily basis is, trying to stay optimistic and positive as much as possible. And I'd just be curious to hear from, one or two of you, what you're looking at within your, line of business, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit. What are some of the good things that you're seeing, some good shifts, some changes that are taking place or that you expect to take place that are going to benefit, your company, your customers, the world, whatever, just some insights you may have. I'd be really curious to see what life is expected to be for you in this new normal.
I'm happy to take that. So I think from Foundation for Women Warriors perspective, one of the things that I've struggled with as a CEO of an organization that provides childcare assistance to women veterans is delivering the message of childcare being a family issue and not just a woman's issue. And so I think as we've all receded back home and are working from home, more and more people realize that your personal life and your family life is actually intertwined with work, and that I think more corporations and organizations are coming to this realization that maybe women have had for years, that childcare is imperative, it's a family's role, and flexibility is needed across the board for childcare. And so I think more, more awareness around how devastating when your kids are out of school or if you don't have access to childcare can be for those that can't afford it. So that's one silver lining. I think also the flexibility and trust of our employees. So I know Ramel talked about having trust and how that would be difficult to regain. I think for our organization, autonomy, I think trusting my employees and giving them autonomy, they're delivering. And to his point of caring about his employee that then was moved to the East Coast, and she's over delivering on things that he didn't even expect. So I think two things really hit home is this flexibility around family. It's not some sort of dirty secret across corporations anymore that you have a family and you need flexibility, and then trust amongst employees that you don't have to micromanage and make sure they're on a computer during certain times a day, so long as they're delivering on what their tasks are.
That's great advice, Jodi. Perfect. Measuring outcomes over process. Key. Jennifer, we got ready for the next one. We're trying to get as many of these in as we can.
Yeah, so the next one will be Ken. Are you there, Ken? I know your video.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. If you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Mine was just more of a comment to Ramel with regard to what he was talking about at NAVWAR and how telework is kind of changed, where prior to COVID breaking out, there was a big push against telework, even though it was more of a federal level requirement to allow the option if it was available, and supported the position. Whereas once we ran into COVID, there was no choice, obviously, and everybody had to implement it. But now everybody's kind of looking at it differently and identifying that, wow, we really can still maintain the same level of performance for the most part. There's always going to be exceptions no matter what. But that we're still able to perform our jobs without that face-to-face or on-site oversight. And it really does come back to the trust aspect. So that was, again, more of a comment to what was already being talked about. It was just it's like the new normal and seeing what we really can accomplish with the new capabilities of technology that we have now.
It's a great comment, Ken. I think that just speaks to the culture that the people on the panel and their organizations, you created that culture in advance, you're ready to go. maybe since it maybe hasn't affected them and their organizations, maybe it has. Maybe you've heard of other organizations that haven't been quite so ready from the culture perspective to be able to allow trust, to be confident in the people's ability to work remotely and disconnected without following up and being micromanaging. So maybe I'll rephrase that as a question to the panelists. Do you have any experience, either friends or colleagues, or maybe in your organizations, where you've learned that, there's a better way to build that trust if you don't already have it in its place at the moment?
Yeah, I'll just say that, trust, it's like a savings account. You kind of build it up, and you need to have this deep buy-in, this cultural relationship with your agency, with the employees, them within themselves. And when crises like these hit, that's when you can draw off that as an agency. You can run on that inertia of that culture for some period. And that's why it's so critical. I mean, you can be a micromanaging boss and try to have your team tell your team what to do all the time and always covering all the bases. But when crises like this hit, you can't be all places at all once, literally and figuratively now, right? So that's when it really pays off in spades. So investing in that when it's not needed, building it when it's not needed for
I could tell Tony was on the move. I was excited to see the back windows like a movie going on. Like I was wondering what I was going to see. So he's being driven around, which we may have lost him. Are you back, Tony? You are muted, my friend. And hopefully your newly licensed teenage daughter is now driving you around.
Driving. We're sitting here. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I was just to finish up. It's the time that it's important to have that type of understanding and responsibility and culture in your agency. So times like this, you can draw off that.
Good stuff. Thanks, Tony. I think we have time for at least one more question. Jennifer, do we have one last final juicy question for our panelists?
Yeah, we do. So I will direct it to Erica, and she'll go ahead and ask her question.
Hi, everybody. My name is Erica. I recently graduated from the USD School of Law, so it's been really great to hear everybody. I know everybody's spoken a lot about accountability and just kind of like taking care of your employees during the pandemic, but I think like obviously not that COVID is like over or anything, but there's been recent events, as we all know, that have really, I think, kind of brought up some issues that maybe are uncomfortable for some people to talk about, and I'm just wondering how you guys have managed that with your groups as leaders to kind of inform people how they can educate themselves about some of the issues that we're facing in our country right now, or just engage them in meaningful conversation, or to see if you guys have had requests from your the people in your organizations to kind of start that process.
I'm happy to take this question. So obviously with the recent events of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and protests and rioting and the news cycle, our organization, being a women's organization and then a women's veterans organization, we understand the intersection of different identities. And so one of the things that I did, like our values, our first and most important value is integrity first. And so that means we have a culture of having uncomfortable conversations, recognizing bias, implicit bias, and being comfortable or uncomfortable with calling each other out on it, because we know that the only way we can serve a diverse community of veterans that we do serve is to have these uncomfortable conversations. So yesterday or the day before, we celebrated or commemorated our 100-year anniversary. But as an organization, I felt like, yes, we've made progress with women, But in light of current events, let's not be tone deaf and try to celebrate 100 years while there are, race issues that we all are need to be a part of the solution. So we took time, we took an hour, 30 minutes of conversation, and then the other 30 minutes for my team to reflect in any way that they wanted to. And I also opened it up in terms of questions of, is there anything else we can be doing? And then this has turned into a survey for us to ask our clients so that and we always try to ask our clients, what else do you need? But I think that as a leader of an organization and as a leader that serves different communities, and especially the Black community is overrepresented in the military community, in the veteran community, we have a responsibility to acknowledge, hear, and listen. And so we're trying to be mindful of that as best we can and make space for it.
That's a great advice. And I wish we had more time. I'd love to probably spend another 15, 20 minutes just going around this, because I think there's a lot of nuggets that people are looking for, how to lead conversations like that. Maybe some people feel appropriately ready to do that and they're comfortable, and maybe other leaders are going, man, I don't know. I want to do it, but I want to do it right, and I'm not sure how to get started and do that. So I think it is something that's encouraging us to have the conversation, to listen, to ask good questions, and to acknowledge that you may not know every answer that your people need, but to just have a dialogue, that goes a long way too. As we wrap up towards the end of this, I want to kind of go through maybe a 15-second lightning pop round. Is there one piece of advice that you would want to leave with the people who are either watching this live right now or the people that will watch it later on video? What's one thing you'd want them to know about how they can successfully, manage this crisis? What advice would you have for somebody? Give you 10 seconds each. Starting with you, Jodi, since you're already there on my screen.
I would say that your network, whether it's your alumni network or your professional network, relying on them to have these difficult conversations and accessing your network, but also being accessible to other people. We don't get through these times alone, and you certainly should not put yourself in a bubble and think that you have to bear the burden of everything alone because you are a leader. Leadership can be lonely, but having these conversations with your peers and colleagues and recognizing the various networks that you do have at your access and utilizing them is so important.
Great advice, Jodi. Tony, what's your words of wisdom that you want to share with our people as we take this away?
Yeah, along the lines of Jodi, it is difficult being at the top of an agency like this, and using other CEOs, other nonprofit leaders in different peer groups, reaching out, testing how they're doing, and then as far as with the with your teams and your staff, one of the most important elements through all the change management steps and phases is communication. Just over communicate, get out in front of the issues, bring them out to bear, so you can get group buy-in and resolution, and just get out in front of any animosities that might potentially start building.
Good advice. Mr. Toth, Jim, what do you have that we can take away that would help us going forward?
Thanks. Two things. The first is if the last 4 months has not, if you haven't leaned onto your vision and values, or if you felt like you have not been able to lean on your organizational vision, values, and employee proposition, I would say that you need to retool them. Because that's what they're for right now, and then every other day too, but right now particularly. So I think this is a great wake-up call that if you are doing a better job at your vision and values, this is chaos and crisis. In the Marine Corps was the same thing. That's when we shined. That's when we really were able to get down to business because we knew exactly what we had to do because it matched up with our vision and our values of organization. It's the downtime that was the weird time. So right now we should be in the zone. And if you're not in the zone, I think you need to go back and look at it very, very closely. And that's for the next one, because it doesn't count on this one. So for this one, because we're already in it, I'm going to read right off Dan Cathy, the CEO of Big Chick-fil-A, and the son of the originator of Truett, wrote this today in an op-ed on and I encourage you to look at it on LinkedIn. It's great. And this is just the end of it. It's much longer and really good, I thought. The most dangerous person in the world is a person with no hope. Let's open the door to dialogue and healing. It's okay if it's messy. It's okay if we shed some tears. We are human. Let's be moved to action. Let's join together to build a world that reflects God's love for us all. So, coming from USD, with a Catholic background and from USD, I think for me, just remembering that God's love through this is an important part of what we need to be focusing on right now, because He does love us, and we are only human, and we can all do better.
Well said, Jim. Thanks for that. Ramel, any final words that you'd like to share with our audience?
Sure. I think in a lot of ways we've fallen back to the fundamentals of our existence, in that, just a sense of belonging, quality time with family. The several virtual happy hours I've had with friends, we're focused on the conversation, not on my drink order is wrong or what's on the menu. So I think from a leadership standpoint, we should also fall back on the fundamentals of leadership, and that is teamwork, focus on the mission, and taking care of our people.
Great advice. And Greg Martin had to drop. He had some battery issues going on, so he expresses his apologies for not being able to wrap this up. But it's a good time for us to pause and to thank the panelists, for everyone who's here, the attendees, and our guests that have spoken. Thank you for giving your time today and helping us understand some complex issues, and maybe feel a little better about what we're doing and some ideas for what we might consider doing to help our people, to help our organization, and to help ourselves get through this difficult time as well. I want to say a special thanks to our AVN board of directors and the support staff from USD that helped us out today. I won't take the time to list them all by name, but if you'll go near the top of your chat, Rob Connect had listed all the folks in there, and I can tell you on behalf of them, we're all passionate about helping people connect with resources that make life better, that make you better, that allow you to be of service in a greater capacity to our community. So thank you for our board that helped put this together. Please reach out to them or me if I can help you in any way as you go forward. Expect that we're going to have more events like this. Our passion is really to connect people with people with answers, right? And have the dialogue and have this build the support. The value of the USD network is that we support each other. Toreros for Life is important, and so we should take advantage of that. Some great people on this call, some great people in our alumni network that we can tap into. So please reach out to them, connect with them, find ways to help each other. I'll leave you kind of with this story that reminds me of this moment, and that's the story of this guy was walking along the street and he fell into a hole. Right? And a priest came by, and the guy looked up and said, "Father, can you help me out of this hole?" And the priest goes, "Well, I'll pray for you, my son." He said a prayer and kept on walking. And then a few minutes later, a doctor came by, and the doctor said, "Hey, what are you doing down there?" And he goes, "Hey, I'm stuck in this hole. Can you help me out?" And the doctor said, "Let me write you a little prescription." Threw that thing in the hole and kept on walking. A few minutes later, another guy walked by, and the guy goes, "Hey, can you help me out of this hole?" And the guy jumps down in the hole to be with the guy. And the guy goes, "Well, dude, what'd you do that for? Now we're both stuck down here." And the guy looked at him. He said, "Well, there's a difference though. I've been down here before and I know how to get out." Right? So the moral of that story is that there's a lot of great veterans that have been in harm's way. They've been in a difficult spot. They've led through crisis and they helped people be successful when it didn't seem like you were going to get through this. So the point is, thank you for being those that have jumped down into a hole to help other people. And if you haven't done that yet, and I'm sure you are, but I want to encourage you as we close to go find somebody's hole to jump into. Go help somebody. It's the best way to help yourself through this is to find that you can be of service to other people. So take advantage of that. Find somebody who needs some love and help them get through this in a safer and a better way. So thanks again for everybody attending today. We're going to wrap this thing up. We're going to stay there. The chat session will be open for a second. If you want to take a couple of notes and just kind of thank the panelists, put some comments in there that we'll share with them. I'm sure they'd love to have the feedback. We'll also be providing a follow-up email that'll have links to all of their organizations and a video transcript or a link to the recording so you can watch this again or perhaps share with other people. And then you can find us again. We encourage you to stay connected. Kind of the purpose of this is to help build community, right? So in the chat window, Rob Connect has linked up our Facebook and our LinkedIn AVN pages. We encourage you to go out there and join that, connect with us so we can stay connected with you, so we can invite you to future events like this so that we can post things and help support you in any way we possibly can. That's what this is about, helping each other. So thanks again for your time today. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you to our panelists and to the USD staff. Have a great afternoon.